10th, and this is another in our series of budget meetings. And before we start, would you please stand and honor America and join me in reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start our budget presentation, we have one finance item for action. Can I have a motion on 2.01, please?
Second.
Curiosities, discussion, comment. Trina?
Yes, I had a question. I was just talking to Tom about this a little bit, but the question was, not seeing that there was a grand total for what it costs, and I wanted to have a little bit more of an understanding as to why there's no grand total, and I think it's important for the public to kind of hear a little bit about that explanation.
Mike?
Is this on the Atlantic?
This is on the airline.
You won't know that. You do it for an hourly rate, you won't truly know how long it takes to do abatement in a particular room, so they bid on their hourly rate. We get an estimated hours on our schedule, but you'll never know a room takes 1 day, 2 days, depending on what they're getting. So it's very common, what you're seeing in that RFP, and it's what we've always done, and I've done my 20-some years doing this now. So you put it out to hourly rate on it. And other side to look on that is the company we've done, and we feel comfortable, very impressed with that. But I strongly support Atlantic.
Can you amend the cat one?
She's just trying to get
Sorry.
the computer first. Second.
Sure. Well, 6 minutes. Sorry. So what they did when they reviewed the RFPs, was taking an estimated number of samples to be unit price, just as part of what it would look like, and Atlantic's around $90,000.
It's around 90, yes. Thank you. That's also what I was looking for. That's really helpful information. Thank you both for that explanation.
Call a question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, next we move to our budget presentation, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Douglas.
Thank you, President Conklin. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, members of the board, our visiting home audience. Yes.
We're trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's still recording, so even if it goes down, the posting goes up. Okay. I want to thank you for coming out. Today is April 10th, and obviously this is a continuation of our budget overview. We're going to fly a little because we're not going to beat the dead horse real quick. Okay, so budget overview, and this is number 5, where other people are just starting or doing their thing. We've been doing this for 2.5 months, and the board's work has really led us to tonight that as we go through, really we're waiting on New York State. We're waiting finalization of state budget by elected leaders. They've already passed an extender into next week. We're hoping that they get it done before the 21st, and then we can really assist our budget. Because we know the worst part is right now, and we expect them to add some to it, which will help our budget in the long run. Preliminary 2025-26 revenue budget. These are the numbers you've already seen, and if you notice, our revenue on the total change is down 0.45%. You can't keep doing that when the state says we're not going to give you the money you need each year, and it's going to be decreased. So we have to be aware of that. That's why our community is so important, and unfortunately, the state is saying they want the community to have more of the decision. Tax cap calculation, you've seen this slide, as well as this slide. Ad nauseum. Last time it changed a little and went up, but other than that, nothing has changed. We're at a maximum allowable tax levy is 7.47%. Tax cap calculation, and then what happens is we have updates. I didn't go that fast, did I?
So let's go through this real quick.
We'll come back to this.
Come back to it.
Summary of budget revenues, this is the next slide, so it's just out of order. We'll fix that for online posting. But our revenues, notice, we've gone through and we've taken those budget revenues, but overall, for everything, is 1.68%. The expense budget. This is where we'll turn it over to Tony and come back to this because we want to tell you about what we've done so far in the updates. So at this point.
So good evening. As we've done in previous sessions, we've gone back and just previous questions or things that come from the board just to reiterate or to explain some things. This one is particular to review the intervention, student intervention systems. It was on the vetting slide in the past, so this is like a checking that off and giving you the detail that goes with that particular one. In our time we've been here, there's been questions to my team and other directors of, is this what you need or what do you need? So we thought it important to kind of give you a global overlook of what the considerations as well as built into the budget currently will allow for us to put into systems work, specifically to that student intervention system. So with a successful budget and what we're proposing here, and with no livelihood affected, what we'll see is some changes in our academic supports in the K-4. With the consolidation, there are offers some efficiencies as well that will help us with accomplishing many of these items at no cost, at a neutral cost, but others are considerations that remain on the list, the 3 items. So we'll start with our intervention approach. Currently, we have interventions across the district, both in the math and the reading support. The new model, as we move towards new scheduled elementary, and conversations we've had with the principals and our team is to revamp that and ensure we have the appropriate number of teachers that are providing interventions, especially during our win blocks or our tier 1 times with our students. And the primary teaching supports, which was a suggested admin consideration, the continuation of the Summer Learning Academy, the curriculum work that enhances that particular part of our MTSS, something we talked through November, December, and January with the board and the community. And lastly, the addition of the elementary principals. So what we're able to do in the system right now, as far as budgetary, we're able to find efficiencies with our TAs through vacancies, through retirements, and move staff around to an extent to which will allow us to hire an interventionist teacher, thereby putting in each of the 3 elementary buildings 4 RTI interventionists, reading and math. So that now when you have a win block time, there's enough support and plenty of support for the sections and the students, as well as to do tier 2 and interventions and tier 3 interventions with students that might need it further, more of the services outside the classroom. So with this model, it does see a reduction in TAs within the RTI model at the exchange for the reading teacher or the math interventionist. So a higher level of service, so it's exchanging out some teaching assistants, which we will find in other places, primary teaching assistant support, and the hiring of interventionists, so that each building will have 4 teaching RTI providers, and then be able to get the 3 primary teaching assistants, all at a neutral cost.
So if we can really emphasize, we're reassigning those teaching assistants. That is not their job anymore, and some may be not happy with it, but we're putting teachers in those roles. They will not be losing any job, they'll just be servicing in their teaching assistant role in a different format. And we're going to take care of those that were displaced from Center Street according to the contract as well. Again, no one's losing livelihood at all. And anybody saying otherwise is absolutely causing a problem, and we will not tolerate it.
So again, the system calls for the movement of TAs through efficiencies, retirements, and systems with our special ed IEPs and other particular nuances to allow for an exchange of getting an appropriate level of support for the 33 elementary buildings in the form of the additional interventionist, and then allowing the 3 primary teaching assistants to be added now as a consideration, but no more as a consideration, but as a cost neutral. So it maintains that they were in the current budget. We don't have to add 3 more into the budget. They're already in the budget. So we can remove and we reduce that with the movement of efficiency to TAs with the consolidation, except retirements and other vacancies. So no loss of livelihood. We will thank everybody. That has been told, something we've heard from the board. That is what we are going to do. And also at the same time, build a better model for our student intervention needs. And we've been asked what is needed. And this is what we're saying we're needing. Now 2 or 3 of those items, the last 3, are considerations still. They still need to be added to the budget. They're not in the budget. And that would be the continuation of the Summer Learning Academy. The curriculum work needed to continue that academic support and the curriculum building of our private courses curriculum, especially although at a smaller scale, it's still important work in the ELA and math. And then the elementary assistant principals that support the academics. We've discussed doing some of the more detailed data work that could happen. We could have into K4 with the addition of that. When I went through the duties and responsibilities of an assistant principal, such work would fall there. Also, we'll talk about SID meetings and assistance when it comes to working with students and assisting the principal in those meetings and the needs of students. Another important pillar of our MTSS work is the social emotional. The board has in the community been very supportive of our growth in the social workers. There have been questions about adding social workers and what's that look like. And rather than an assistant principal, we did make some shifts with the help of Kelly Squires and her team and my team to go through and say, what does it look like? How do we ensure that each of the 3 elementary buildings have the appropriate supports when we get into next year? We have a model that does move those current Center Street social worker, social work assistant, and the school psychologist into positions that we are confident will fit that social emotional support that's needed in the K4 for those 3 buildings. And of course, we know that the addition that the administrator also has that social emotional support. Again, that first bullet is already in the budget. The elementary principal is one of the considerations. And this is a focus on proactive behavior practices and tiered interventions that we see in the 3rd pillar of our MTSS work. We see the same 2 things over again, of course, because of that work and the proactiveness of having 2 such positions to assist with the needs of our students from our youngins in our pre-K program through our 4th grade. So we said we do a review. Just want to give you, this is what we suggested that the system could need and work through to continue moving forward. So we want to make sure we just lay that out within the framework of the work we hold true to and what our district vision and goal is of this work. That was a lot, especially in that first one, because it's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to working with the positions open at any given time for teaching assistants and where we'd like to land people. So if there were questions.
Just so I understand. So how many RTI positions do we currently have?
So currently in the system we have 2 reading and RTI per building for a total of 8, and then we have 2 that float between an elementary each. So 10 in total RTI teachers, interventionists.
Okay.
Then we have 2 teaching assistants assigned to 3 of the elementaries and 3 to another. So we have 9 teaching assistants.
Okay.
This model will go to 4 in each building of teachers and 1 TA per each of the 3 buildings.
So the RTI position, that's not a position, but the people in those positions will go into...
In the movement of all those parts, yes, it's by possible development of the 3 primary.
Right, but what we know today as an RTI position will no longer be that way tomorrow.
Just for
Next year.
6 RTI TAs, and they will have the ability to be in another teaching assistant position, and we will be adding 2 new RTI instructional positions, and everything will be focused on ELA and math.
Okay, so then what is, I guess, you look at the scope of work that we have for the RTI position versus the scope of work for a TA position, or is there anything that we're losing from what the kids are going to receive?
No, we get a high level of service and understanding of the delivery of science and reading, specifically in our phonics work and in our math, work that we're doing at the AMT, the department community transfer work that we're doing. So that level of knowledge and skill set is higher with the teacher. Now, don't get me wrong, our teaching assistants, we have many of those positions that are valued. Let's be very clear on that. We have some teaching assistants that have been in these roles for years that are awesome. And they will still land in the system and still do great work with our students. I don't want to discount them by any means. This is a redistribution of the work and maintaining livelihood to get a higher level of service that we believe is needed in our RTI.
And also to fill some areas that we haven't been able to fill. And that means those areas that haven't been being addressed will have. Some of our teaching assistants have been given outstanding service.
So just to follow up on that, so there's 6 RTI TAs that are being reassigned, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
I had a question on this too. So you're saying that there's going to be 5 total people now per building, 4 teachers, 1 TA. What is it currently?
For most buildings, it's 2 and 2. For Gardner Road, it's 2 and 3. 2 teachers,
3 teachers.
2 teaching assistants in each building.
You're saying that they floated, so like per day, how many people are in the classroom?
Good question. So at 2 of the, there's 2 RTI teachers that float 0.5 at each building. So I misspoke, so I'll go back, my apologies. So any given elementary has 2.5 RTI providers, sometime during the day.
Okay, so it's.
2 permanently there, 1 that floats in and out depending upon the schedule.
So this is increasing the number of
2.5 to 4.
To 4.
2.5 to 4. Did, I didn't do the math, but for the number of kids that are coming on, and I don't know, obviously, like how many of them are going to have an IEP or may need those services or the help, but for
They don't
that,
service
this
students with
feels,
disabilities.
this feels comfortable, like we don't feel,
This is better than what we have.
this is better. Well, so I'm wondering, like, without misplacing them, would it be even better if we had everybody still in that position? I know that we're replacing people, but.
I appreciate that, but the goal here was to keep it cost neutral and to find a way to support the primary teaching assistants without having a budget add. We valued it, but we wanted to make sure we were very conscious of what's being asked here and to remove that out of the budget considerations and to make it happen within the current structure.
Okay, you don't know off the top of your head how much it would have cost if it wasn't cost neutral? Like to say hypothetically.
We had a value in a previous presentation to the 3.
It's about 240,000.
Are you referring just to the 3 TAs, primary TAs? I guess I'll make sure I answer your question.
If we wanted to keep the TAs in the reading program and just make sure that we had an even lower ratio, student per teacher ratio for that, if we wanted to keep them, how much would that cost?
240,000 plus.
240 to keep it the way? Okay. So I guess that's my question.
Right.
And the hard part is the benefits that come with it, the healthcare, it depends on who you hire. That can drive our budget up even more unexpectedly. We feel comfortable at this point. We have other needs as well, and we're increasing the instructional service that with the supports that the board and the community have been gracious enough, we don't need the additional. It could always be used at any time, yes, but at this point, this is enough, especially with what we're asking of you.
Okay, and are we short on teacher assistants in general overall in the rest of the areas of the
We see a movement of vacancies in that particular work. So yes, it's any given time we might have people coming in and out. So numbers today, I had updated numbers and 24 hours later, no lie, 12 hours later, and I'm wrong. So there is some movement in that amongst that group. But currently, we are confident that we will land all current people employed into positions for next school year, as well as be able to do this model.
Provided this budget.
Provided the budget.
Everybody,
Yes.
And I want to be very clear again, the last three items are not, those are still considerations. What we're offering is we can achieve the intervention and the primary teaching assistance within the current structure and the current budget that's been allocated, without adding as a consideration.
Because for me, like, for me, I think that the more, if we were able to keep all of the people there and just having them there to be assistants in the reading and to have that intervention, then maybe we can help include more
I get
kids.
it,
So
but I
that's
want you to
why-
take the perspective, because as we listed on the board, those primary teaching assistants in K-8 in the past, have such a wider scope and interaction with so many more kids.
Oh, I'm not like that.
Right, so what we're getting for that, I think we get a better, the service and the understanding and the knowledge set that we're gonna achieve in interventions. I don't discount what you're saying, but I guess as a system, we're saying, this is what we need.
Yes, but yeah, and I do think that having, somebody who is certified, who does that work, I understand, I get that. I'm just saying that if, to keep the 6 people, that's like extra 2 in each.
It would just be an additional consideration of the
Yes.
budget before we
Yes,
act it. Yes.
so I like that. That's what I would just wanted to say.
certainly understand, I wish I had that type
Yeah.
of ability. Others? Just gotta reset myself, okay, there. And then the expense budget, and at this point, we're going into a couple things where we've done some cleanup, and then we've got to talk about the biggest thing tonight, and then ultimately, the board's budget is built, and then we will try to do our best between now and the next. So at this point, I want to turn the updates over to Katie. She'll take you through that, as well as, I think, the 3 things that are still there, as well as the final layout, and then I'll come back and we're going to have that discussion and hopefully get to a resolution of what actually is the final determination of the board.
All right, I'm gonna just highlight this real quick. Work always is done in the 2 week interim of our meetings. Made some more adjustments in salaries, benefits, supplies and equipment, and contractual. A reminder, as Tony has mentioned, in his outline of the work and the restructuring we're looking to do, the summer learning academy, the 3 elementary assistant principals, and the curriculum work are still items up for discussion tonight to determine how the board would like to proceed with the addition of those in the budget. So this is the budget today. After all the work that's been done, we are now at a budget increase of 3.22. Just as a reminder, we started out at 3.68. So that was about a $477,000 move to the positive that we're able to make on the expense side. I do want to just quickly harken back to the revenue side. We're at 1.68% now. We started at 1.38, so we gained $305,000 on the revenue side since we started. So all told, we've gained to the good $782,000 through the work that's been done since we started this process. So took a good bite out of the gap that we were looking at. So the budget that you see here, the total expenditures line is at 3.22%. That does, as we talked about before, include all the considerations. So all the things that Tony just talked about supporting the HCSD structure and the things we're looking to reallocate, improve those services as far as the academic, social, emotional, and the behavioral practices, those are all in here, in that 3.322%. Again, no livelihood was lost in any of these shifts. It was just a reallocation of the great resources we already have. And then just for the comparison, if we were to pull those 3 items out, we're looking at a 2.90 year-over-year increase in the budget.
Which both of those percentages are well within normal.
They were great.
The best ranking is between 3.5% and 4% a year, is usually the growth.
The real kicker is at 1.68% in revenue.
Okay.
That's what hurt us this year. This is, again, I said it before, this is a fine budget. This is a fine budgetary increase for the size of the budget that we have. It's unfortunate that we don't have the support from the state, and the state is looking for us to go to local sources.
pretty much where we're at, and we do have reasonable numbers. I will tell you, you've been very brave out front, you made this decision, really almost 2 meetings ago, especially last meeting. There's at least, I think, 3 or 4 other districts having the challenge because they're in the same thing. This is not an expenditure problem. This is now wholly a revenue problem. Last year was an expenditure and revenue problem, but we took care of a lot of the expenditures, except for the things that are additional that we have to talk about tonight.
So our gap closing resources that we've used along through this process, we've crossed off the ones that we've already decided we're not going to pursue anymore as far as additional reserve use, fund balance use, and budget reductions as far as staffing programming outside the bounds of just the normal course of business adjustments that would be made, which leaves additional foundation aid. We'll see. And the board did, at the last meeting, opt to move forward with considering the challenge.
You zeroed in on the 2 options, or an option in B.
So I want to give you a scenario of what it looks like with these 2 options that we're considering. We're looking at if we move forward with a budget that does not include those 3 items, and we're looking at a budget that includes all of those items, and we can have that discussion and if anything falls in between. So if we went with no considerations, added those 3 items were pulled out, our challenge amount would be $1.2 million. The levy required for this would be $51 million with the use of $1 million of debt service to bring down the taxpayer portion. The levy increase would be 8%. The projected full value tax rate would be $16.52, and this is a 69-cent increase over our current year tax rate, which is $15.94. If we went with everything that Tony outlined in our look at reallocating our resources to the betterment of our services, the challenge amount would be the $1.578 million. The levy would be $51,971,000, also including an offset of that $1 million in debt service to help that local share. The levy increase would be 8.68%. Full value projected tax rate is $16.63, $16.63, with a projected change over the current year's $15.94 of 58 cents.
Actually, we do need to make a correction. Yeah, what it was is they actually loaded, you've got the right one loaded, but those numbers are off. Did that go away?
Yeah, essentially.
You just have to flip the 2. The one without considerations has a tax rate of 58 cents. The one with considerations has a tax rate of 69.
Oh,
They were flipped, just in
and
those
I
2
think we
numbers.
made that update, we got the,
Yeah, so they're trying to fix that right now. We will make sure the accurate is out there, but if you can just do that mentally, obviously the ones with the more money would have the higher tax rate, the ones with no consideration would have the lowest tax rate. And that's our conservative projection at this point, using just that amount of debt service. Those are the things that we will have to work on and refine over the next couple of weeks. So we think that this is probably your highest case scenario. Our job will be to break it down for the next meeting once you tell us what to do.
so while they're getting that up and around, I do want to issue my annual caveat on the assessment data. Very preliminary, a little more so preliminary than we've seen in prior years. There is more work to be done before the assessments have to be turned over on the 1st. The usual course of business things that they look at is as far as any reevaluations that they're going to do, how they're going to shift their level of assessments, things of that nature. We do have some municipalities that are integrating solar farms into their assessments. They're assessed in a little bit different manner, so they're working on getting those taken care of. And we also have a natural gas pipeline that expands 100 miles. It's a very large pipeline that crosses over into 5 of our 7 municipalities. It's complex to assess such an entity this particular, or pipeline is involved in the process, and they're trying to come to a mutual agreement before the May 1st. I will say if an agreement can't be reached by May 1st, because that's what they'll submit what they submit, and the owner then has the right to file a grievance for the tax certiorari process. So those are still being worked on now. It's a very large pipeline. Last assessment I think I saw on it was pushing $80 million over a variety of municipalities. So they're working through that, and I'm hoping by the time we meet again at the 23rd, a little bit more of that has been resolved and these numbers could be a little bit better.
If you can, just like Katie talked about that pipeline right now, maybe 80 million, that's the hard part. Until you know, it's hard. Like, if all of a sudden they say it's 70 million, then that means it's not as much in our rate could go up. It's, say, all of a sudden 100 million, it could potentially drive the rate down. That's why Katie takes the most conservative estimate from the data that they have now. We'll try to, we don't know if we can get that rate better. We think we have the possibility, but we may never know until August. Remember last year there was a pipeline that came on. We were at, I think, at about the same time, about 60, and then all of a sudden we got some refinement in that. And it brought us down to 11 to 24. I can't say that that's going to happen here, but I can't say it's not either. All I can say is we're going to give you the best estimate from where we are as of right now with the most conservative view. Those are the potential maximum numbers, barring anything else changing. Now, between now and August, look at, we passed a thing with a rate of maximum $24 last year, and it ended up being a negative 48. You see what I'm saying? So that's what happens that we will never be able to predict. So our conservatives usually, our trend has been higher, and then it does come down. Is it guaranteed? No. We just try to make sure that we put us in the best situation. So there's the differences. Now it's correct. The no considerations is 58 or $58 on a $100,000 value. Maximum with all considerations is $69 on a $100,000 full value. Ultimately, it could be more, it could be less. Our track record is it usually goes down. We just don't know. But that's our conservative estimate right now.
And the takeaway from this slide, so we talked about the comparison to the current $15.94 current year rate. If you look at the 11 cents on the difference column, that's the difference between if we included those three items, the assistant principals, the curriculum, and summer learning academy, it changes those tax rates by 11 cents. So $11 per $100,000 home to add those three additional considerations.
So, now that you understand that, what's the next slide?
Ready to chat.
Okay? So, this is the board's work at this point. Can you put up the 3? Yes, please. That's where we're at. What we need to know tonight, even though we've got it built, we are at no considerations. That's 50, what was it, 58 versus 69? $58 per 100,000. What do you want, board? It's your time. What do you want to do? Do you want to add any of that? Remember last time you were saying, hey, option 3, option 4, maybe if there's something in the middle. I don't know. But that's really all we need tonight. And once we have this, we will build the best thing for you to approve at the next one. Who wants to begin? Katrina.
So, one thing, did you say that the monitors, the bus monitors already got built into it?
They did.
Okay, so they didn't
Yeah,
build it. And
we
then-
shifted them like the teaching assistants, yes.
Okay. And I did just want to say something clarifying on that when we were talking about the monitors for the last time, and I had suggested bringing in people who may not have their CDL to be monitors. For special need runs, though, specifically, I would say that you definitely should have another bus driver who is a bus driver being a monitor. And I just wanted to clarify that, because there is something, there having an extra driver is good, but I know especially with these 5, 6, you know, the way that things are shifting, being able to have an extra hand on deck, I think would probably be beneficial. You know.
Yeah, they're looking at that and trying to build what they can with
Yeah,
their
so I
staff.
just wanted to talk about that from the last time, because I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I didn't say that. So for me, I say yes to the curriculum work in the summer learning academy. I think for me, adding in the assistant principals, I'm not discounting what they bring to the table and the necessity that there might be, but just for right now, I feel like we should wait a year and see. To me, if we had the money and you were telling me that you were gonna have it in reading, like teacher assistants and more for reading, like the teachers, the preliminary people, I would be in favor of that. And I just think that being honest with you about my opinion. So to me, I would land yes to the Summer Learning Academy and the curriculum work, and not quite yet, not no to the administration, unless you wanted to come back and tell me that it was, we're just keeping the teammates, then I would feel comfortable challenging with that. And I wanted to say thank you, because this is beautiful. 8% looks very nice, 8.68 looks really good, and I think that if we did take out that 265, that's gonna be even lower in between. So I wanted to say, good job.
Others? Julie? Ms. Monahan, sorry. Just the money.
Thank you. I will second what Katrina said. I think it looks really nice, and I appreciate all the hard work that all of you have done to it. I also would support summer learning curriculum. I think myself, I'm not ready for the assistant principals yet. However, I would question what it would look like if it's even a possibility to have one that would work on an ABC schedule, so essentially a floating admin or assistant principal that would, and it's kind of the first year to see what it would look like. I don't know if that's an option in the curriculum world, so.
We can work on anything that the board decides.
Okay. That's where I'm at, so thank you.
Okay. Others? Yeah, Ms. Shaw?
Yes, thank you for the great work that you've done. And I also am in agreement for Summer Learning Academy curriculum work. And I'm not ready for the assistant principals yet either. I think it's too much to ask right now. But I am comfortable with maybe hiring one. And I know we've had previous conversation before about seeing if there is possibility in the internship world to see if we can bring people in on internship who need to do their administrator license and need to do those internships, and see if that can provide some assistance as well, kind of a win-win. Okay,
No problem.
thank you.
Ms. Evans?
So, I'm in favor of all of that, and the reason being is we're going into a year of major change next year, and I know I said this before, and just adding 100+ students to each of the elementary schools, I think is going to be a lot, and you know, and I know when we say it's an administrator being added, but I look at our principals as, yes, they're administrators, but they're hands-on with our students every single day, right? So I think that type of administrator is very different than, no offense, but like in like the business office or whatever, do you know what I mean? So, and I think it's viewed differently in the community, and I could be wrong. So I am in favor of it, because I just think next year is going to be just new territory for everybody. I also, over history, I mean, these numbers are very conservative, right? Because Katie and her team are very conservative when they look at the projected full value tax rate and things. So I'm also pretty confident that it's going to look even better than this, right? right?
Please let me say something, because I would say that, and I already know what she's gonna say, because she's already pushed me to say, Tom, you can't go out there and promise, because this is the 1 year that we're being ultra conservative, because we just don't know if there's gonna be a challenge, and we have to be very careful about that.
And I understand that, right? I've been around long enough to understand that, and I'm not gonna promise anything, but in my mind, that's kind of what I'm seeing, which is why I think that all of these considerations, should be added
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? We're going around there, okay.
I would echo the comments about thank you for all the work on the budget. I think it's been a very smooth process this year. I certainly understand the struggle with the assistant principal piece. I completely agree with Learning Academy and curriculum. I think Ms. Dale's point is very well taken. I just kind of emphasize that. If you think about a principal at an elementary school, right? It's hands-on, visiting classrooms, meeting with teachers, meeting with parents, just really making the school function, and particularly with students at that level. I think it's a real need. And so what I'm thinking about is, what it takes to try to include all of that. If my math is right, and granted these are all estimates, but looking at the difference of 11 cents per thousand for a $350,000 house, it's $40.
Let me break it down just a little bit more.
Okay.
And if I could, just to help speed some things along. I've already heard, I think everybody's in line with curriculum work and summer learning academy. Can I just have a show of hands? So that's going to be included in our budget. So now it's really down to the brass tacks. Just so you know, curriculum work is 1 cent of that 11 cents. Summer Learning Academy is 2 cents of that 11 cents, rounding up. Each assistant principal is 3 cents. On $100,000, $1, $2, $3 per $100,000. That's the breakdown of it. Give or take a couple pennies here and there. But that's what I think you're trying to get at is, okay, if we did 1 and 2 and did 1 assistant principal, it's 6 cents or $6. If we do 2, which I can't necessarily say 2 because I'm not going to be able to, somebody's always going to be short a week. But with 1, you just do the rotation. But 2 is going to be $9. And 3 is going to be the full 11. If you've already set the Summer Learning Academy curriculum, you've already put $3 onto it. So that 58 is roughly now 61. At the high side, 61 per 100,000. Now really all you, 58 cents, 59 plus the 3, roughly the 3 cents it would be for curriculum then. So now it's really just going up. It's your decision. 3 assistant principals, 2, I would probably say 2 is harder, even though more is better. I know that's certainly what the administrators would say. 1, I will tell you, 1 would make a huge difference no matter what than none. So that's really the range that I think you're in, Dan, between 61 and 69. It's roughly about an extra $6 per 100,000.
Yeah, so the point I'm making is you take a reasonably priced home, maybe it's $350,000. That's $28, right? So if we're that close, and for $28 additional dollars, we can get what we're hearing from the administration and for the district's benefit and the students' benefit is really needed. To me, it's worth adding in that additional little piece. So it's not like we're that far away and this is a significant gap or increase, right? So that ultimately leads me to be in favor of trying to include all 3, because I think justifying that challenge is essentially the same as justifying a challenge without the considerations. There's no material difference.
Okay.
I'm on the same page with Dan and Christine. I think it And when we say hands-on, I know Kim will hate me for saying this, but we need hands-on. Like, I've seen Kim wiping people's down. I've seen, like, they're getting their hands dirty, and the kids, they're not just sitting in their offices all day. They're really making a difference. So I would be in favor of all three considerations.
Marianne?
I came in with a slightly different opinion than I have right now. I didn't realize how, it's my teacher voice. I didn't realize how small of a difference it really is when you think, as Dan pointed out, $28 for what we're getting. My only, I love to see 3 principals, especially as Christine pointed out, it's a new year. We have a new kind of system going, and more there to help, obviously better. And I agree, I think the assistant principals have a tremendous role. But I'm not quite sure about the community. I hope their impression is that yes, this is going to be wonderful. Times are hard, and they're getting harder. And I'm just worried that some voters will see that we're adding administrators and take a more negative look towards that. So I right now, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of on the fence because I want the budget to pass, but I want principals too, and look. And so I'm just kind of thinking right now. I truly see the need with the situation that's going to be with the 3 new schools and lots of change, and change for teachers, more importantly, change for children, and the amount of money that's, thanks to all of you for getting me in this conundrum, because it's all your fault. You've done so well with bringing everything down. So, there.
Well, I still struggle with having 3 assistant principals. I guess I remember back when our kids went to school, we had around 550 kids, and we had 1 administrator in our building. And I know times have changed, but I think I push more for extra help with kids, teaching assistants, another RTI teacher, because the kids still have, or social workers. There's a lot of struggles with all the kids today, and I'm not totally convinced it would be just an assistant principal. I see an assistant principal cost, and maybe you could have 2 other helpers, 2 bodies instead of 1 assistant principal. So, I would support 1 floating, but I'm not sure I would support all 3.
Thank you.
I gotta time myself. So we're going to go out and challenge, and I think there's a difference between saying we're going to challenge to preserve everything we have, and then make the challenge higher because we're going to add other things. I'm in favor of the Learning Academy and the curriculum. I think there's a strong historical antipathy. There we go. In the community, a long history of we have too many administrators, and if they see we're adding 3, I think Mary Ann was accurate in her assessment of how the community could react to that. So, at best, I would be in favor of 1. I could see to see how it works, but I think the public would not react favorably to seeing 3 additional administrative positions in our budget.
I just want to ask a question, the reality of it is, when you look at administrators, it's actually really 4 elementary school principals right now to having 3 next year.
It's still 3 because remember Patrick Patterson left and we're using an interim, so that's already been taken out of the budget.
I understand that, but you still have, when you look at the number of students, right, and I had the math all done, and I don't know where I did with that paper, and this is from multiple board meetings ago. I mean, it's still, you know, that principal to student ratio is still increasing, right? And so, you know, I think that's also an important thing, especially at that level. And, you know, we talk a lot about the social and emotional well-being and time, and things today are much different than they were even pre-COVID, right? And the needs that our students have and the needs that our families have, you know, so having that extra person in the building that could help with the parents, could help with the students, could help with the teachers, could help with the social workers, can kind of be, it sounds trivial when I say jack of all trades, but essentially, I mean, you know, we see our principals all the time wearing multiple hats, right? So I just think, you know, the increase that's going to go on, I really don't see our principals as administrators, right? I see them as hands-on helping our kids and our families every single day.
I understand, I appreciate that sentiment. As a superintendent, it's hard. I know my administrators need some help, no matter what. As a superintendent that's responsible for passing the board budget, as a challenge, that forms another stressor, how to say. So what I heard was definitely on the 2. What I heard is there's not a majority to bring in all 3. But I heard there is most likely a majority to at least try to do 1, potentially. But that's ultimately the final call of the board. If I just asked right now, and this is not a vote, it's just more surveys so board members can see. And you can tell me, don't ask us that question. How many at this point would prefer to see no administrator? And you don't have to explain, I can understand because you did.
I have a
Go ahead.
thought.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is, so, I would be in favor of adding a 1 administrator if we were also having, more of the teacher assistants being able to stay, because I feel like that's going to be a big shift with having more kids in the schools. And I know, you know, you guys have worked it, but just to have more reading teacher assistants in those positions, I would feel comfortable, and I would be curious to see how many people on the board would say okay to, you know, I know you want to get rid of 6, but maybe say, okay, well, we could take 4.
I need you to correct that, we're not getting rid of 6.
I know, not getting rid.
Okay, it's just the public.
We're not getting rid of anybody, but to move or shift, if we could keep, because you didn't know the exact amount of what the 6 to stay in RTI would cost. But if we could keep 4 and have 1 administrator, I would kind of be in favor of
I
that.
appreciate the contest.
To ask if anybody else is in favor of that.
Does anybody else want to? Because I can tell you, we're just raising the fee.
I just don't know how much a teacher is, because I didn't
They're
know.
roughly 26, what?
Well, for the 6.
They're over $30,000 a piece with benefits.
30 with benefits, I understand.
Yeah, that's the problem. What
I just
we're
don't-
doing is, if I can finish, what we're doing is we're adding more staff, and we have a budget problem that's revenue based. So we can keep adding more staff, and I've used this with Warren, in course grade, I'll do this to get these. The problem is, we don't have them at this point because we're hiring 2 teachers to replace that need. And that is what's going to be the instructional support. A teaching assistant does not provide first-hand instructional support.
Oh, yeah.
They provide support. Now, depending on what happens in the building, we leave that to the building principals if all of a sudden something needs it. But in each of the buildings, they are going to have a teaching assistant with them, and now 4 RTI teachers, where before they had 2.5, and they had, I think it was, did you say 3? Yeah, 2.5, and they had 3 teaching assistants in 2 of the buildings and then 2 in another. So we're not, I'll tell you, as administrative team and superintendent, I'm not comfortable adding more positions. These were the positions that were in the budget. I also understand the board's struggle with the administrative position because, let's face it, we had that last year. Everybody thinks we're very high on administration, we're one of the lowest, and I've said this over and over when people come and they talk and they sit down and see what we do compared to everybody else. We have one of the lowest administrative ratios, even in our buildings for the most part. But the big thing is this shift does need support. So I'm not trying to say I don't value the statement, it's just that we're going to ask our community to do something that no other community's done. And pass 2 challenge budgets in a row without ever taking one staff major reduction to try to right-size the budget, which we know is going to take 1 to 4 years to try to correct. And we do need retirements down the road to ultimately correct. Otherwise, there's no other way to correct a staff-reliant budget. So to add more, it would be irresponsible for us to sort of say we would support that. That's why we have the administrator.
Can I
Yeah.
just add one other food for thought on that? I completely understand your thought of maintaining the RTITAs and the value that, I'll just talk about, the value that they provide to that particular program. But we're also taking those great current resources that we have and they're shifting over to another role that we all deem was important to the primary level TAs. We're getting that back by doing this model.
Yeah.
Which we don't always fill those
Right.
positions, so we're getting stronger with our teaching assistants.
So by restructuring the RTI and shifting more teacher-centered versus TA-centered, we can gain that other support at the primary level where we also do need those extra hands in the classroom to help the teachers and help the students at those very young levels. So it's a trade, and I understand where you're going, but we were very mindful of, what do we value, what do we need, and we had these great people who will do very well in this other role as well that we need.
So then I guess I would say, and like we were saying, we have 2, we have for jumping back to back, that I think that we definitely cannot be adding more. I think that one is probably the right way to go in that aspect.
Yeah, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, I recognize I was the one just doing the math and saying, from a practical standpoint, it's not a lot, but I think those are some telling points that have been made about maybe the reaction to the perception of the increased administrators. I think ultimately what's most important is that the challenge pass, right? So I do have some concern about the fact that could be kind of a lightning rod that could lead to potential opposition, and then we'd be in a worse situation. So the idea of 1, seems like maybe it's picking up some momentum, and I was curious to hear from you, Dr. Davis, or whomever, do you feel like there'd be still value with that to see how the model works, or, to provide incremental support? Can you talk about that?
First, I want to thank you for bringing up that's the main stressor. My job as an employer for the board is to try to ensure that our livelihoods keep going and the community gets the best education opportunities possible. They were very gracious last year. We had a wonderful rate and it ended up going down even though assessments go up because people are adding value to their own personal property. But that's the key thing. If this budget were unsuccessful, and we have to remember, there hasn't been a lot of controversy right now, but that's because the board acted early on and said we want to try to minimize human impact. But that makes you worry. Are people going to be as motivated as they were last year? This is good. I can only say as a resident and a person that's done this for almost 40 years, this is a good budget. But I can't say that just because something's a good budget as a resident, that as your superintendent, somebody's gonna say, they're just gonna stick it to us again. And now, see, they're just going to do this or this. And our ultimate goal is, like you said, we've got to try to ensure the livelihood, the sanctity of our educational program without making the reductions. Because if the budget is unsuccessful, that's just a challenge amount, right? Above 2%. The board may say, we're going below 2%. That's all budgetary personnel reduction. So that's why you do have to be mindful, so thank you. Look, I can tell you the administrators need some help just because they're gonna have more staff, they're gonna have more students. I also believe we have a veteran administration, and I know they get tired, but just like administrators here at the district office, we saw our share of reductions across the district, and we understand that. We are always going to do what we have to do to get the job done. And I know my building principals will. Anything to relieve or vent some of that stressor would be much appreciated, and try to live for another day, but we've got to pass the budget. Like I said, 2 is sort of hard to work with, 3 is easier, 1 is preferable for me, and I'm sure the administrators as well. Than anything, we'd have to work on that. But I'd also try to look and see, like Ms. Chabon said, if we do have anybody and we have the opportunity to try to get some training and so forth. So for me, my bottom line position, if I had to tell you, is I want at least 1. I think the community will understand, but if they see everything, they aren't going to understand. And this is for, 1 is for every part of the community as well. It's not just for one building. It's not for the biggest building. It's to go and be the interrelationship, I think, between each of the 3 buildings, because that's one of the things we want, is that we want our buildings joined somehow. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I know if I was an administrator and if other administrators were me, I'm trying to help move the district forward and move the administrator forward. And if it doesn't go well, then we'll remove it. If it goes well, you may say, okay, this would help by having the other 2 buildings at a full time. But we're also looking at what happens in the future. All I know is if you do 1, that goes up 6 cents, so we're at roughly about $64. No, 3, I know, 3 plus the 1 is 3, it's 6 cents. See, Douglas math does work every now and then. But $64 per thousand, that's most likely our maximum. Now, can we potentially impact that? We are, if the board agrees, 1 plus the summer learning academy curriculum, we still have to do some play with the debt service. We still have to play with the foundation aid, because our big thing is people will sit there and say that's still too much. Right now it's at 8, probably 8.3% or so. Well, what if I can get that 8 to 7.3? Right, and still get that principal. Now, some people will say, hey, what if we can get to 6? Would you entertain adding those 2 principals? I don't know what the right answer is there, because it's still, the issue is perception. And perception matters when you deal with a challenge. Every challenge that has always passed has been because there's been significant cuts. Our challenge was to avoid significant cuts, and everybody knew about it. This year's challenge is to avoid those same cuts, if not more. And if by chance we get lucky and our rate goes down, we're still doing almost 11 years with full construction at from 1804, potentially lower, and we've rebuilt a good portion of health back to the district. Still take a couple years. So that would be my advice to everyone. I know everybody like 3, 1 would be the great. So real quick, go ahead.
Sorry, may I ask? Can you, and I apologize, I went back, Ms. Dell referenced numbers from a previous board meeting about budget for the students in each of the elementaries. And I have something similar. I have around 480 will be going into retro fair in a big class. So
I'm not sure if that's.
It's roughly, it's not 300 kids, it's about 264 plus 22 shift to try to balance them out. Tony, do you remember the actual numbers? Big, Gardner Road at one point was 470 to 480 with one principal and operated that way for 2 or 3 years.
So can you tell us, and I apologize for the repeat
Sure.
question, but how many social workers are also in those buildings?
In the reconfiguration, what we were suggesting earlier, there's 3 elementaries, so 3 social work assistants in each of the buildings.
Yep.
With one having a school psychologist, and 2 social workers,
Okay.
master's level.
Thank you.
So real, Ms. Sanders? Oh, Sue?
I'm Susan. I do agree, there is a perception, even though you say it's only 11 cents, it's 22 cents. When people read the letter and they see more administrators, that's the perception that it's tough to change because, and we want this budget to pass. What was our challenge last year?
Our challenge was actually higher than this last year in percentage. We were up in 9% range and we were actually at 12. The only major difference is the amount of debt service. We used $2 million. We aren't going to be there this year. We have to step back. But we're going to try to bring down that percentage and also maybe bring down the rate. It's just still too early for us to do that. That's why we need this decision. And once we have it, we will work our damnedest to get the best possible option to go out to the community for you to approve Wednesday the 23rd. I keep getting that one wrong.
What's that? The next meeting is.
Adopted budget.
Oh, May 20th is the.
No,
Oh, May 23rd.
April. April 23rd, okay.
The most important thing is that we present a budget that can be passed.
Right.
Yeah.
Tony, numbers?
Sure. K through 4 only. At next year at Big Flats, let me just check in, make sure I'm looking at the right column. Yes, K through 4 will be at 415. Pre-K adds another 40 to 50, depending upon enrollment. Gardner Road will be at 452. They're going to have another 80 with pre-K.
Because they have the rooms.
Ridge Road, because of the compression and not having pre-K, down into the Center Street footprint, will have about 395.
And then the 3 social workers or combination of.
The school side, yes.
Or in each of those
In each of those buildings.
Tom? Corbett?
It's okay. I write it on checks, and then I have description of it. Don't tell Bill. I do want to commend all the people that worked on the new model for the RTI, and to have 4 full-time teachers in the building just sounds really good to me, because even before I retired, it was part of the program. It wasn't that long ago. And it was part-time people, and like you said, you had one that was 0.5, and that is so difficult on students and the teachers and everything. So we have 4 per building, and the idea that none of our current teaching assistants are going to lose a job. They're all going to have a position, and I think it's so important that we're keeping their positions. And I don't in any way degrade what they do, because they're wonderful. And I don't know many of them personally, but having worked with teaching assistants, but I think that model is just whoever thought about good. And I guess I just want to say it again. I worry, as Sue just finished saying, the perception, if in the newsletter that goes out it says 3 new administrators, and maybe it's because I'm older, but I worry that would be a detriment to passing the budget. It scares me.
So I've heard from everybody and everything. What I think I hear is when we ask no administrator, nobody put up their hand. Is there anybody here that wants all 3 at this point? And that's okay, put up your hand. I know. 1 and 2. 2 is going to be even the same as multiple administrators. So I'm going to ask you if you can support one administrator, the Summer Learning Academy curriculum. Just by a show of hands, this isn't a vote. If that's the case, the board has now given us the direction that we need to finish the budget. Our job now is to take this and try to make that even better. We're going to be dealing with debt service. I know Katie's going to be hounding the assessors. We want people to know that this is a challenge, and this budget is hopefully something that the community will get behind and be successful, because if not, there is going to be major reductions. That's the long and short of it. Now, what are they? People are going to ask. A lot of it you already saw last year. It's just going to take a little different form. We're hoping that the community, because basically the state has said, you're on your own. And the question is, and I do believe Horses does value its education system. And they want the best, but they want to make sure that we do it the best and try to get that to the best numbers we can. That's now our job to bring back for you to approve your final budget. Are you okay with that?
I just have one question.
Sure.
I'm positive this vote would pass the first time, but if for some reason it didn't, we can't challenge twice, can we?
No, good question. Hypothetically, say the first vote did not pass. The second vote, the board can put up the same budget, challenge again, put up a budget right at the 2%, which requires 50% plus 1. The board can also just go straight to a contingent budget. Please don't do that. That would require, roughly about $3.4 million in cuts or more. But the board has all that. If the board opted for a contingent budget, there is no more vote. The board can always go 0. But if the budget fails twice, the community is saying, you're going 0. Basically, this is your budget, but ultimately, the community decides what the budget is. So that's, I think you're putting the faith in the community, let them see, and if not, the community is saying, cut the programs, cut the staff. I don't think that's what they're going to say, personally, as long as we're reasonable and we explain things. But we have what we need to do at this point. Are you okay with us trying to do the best we can to bring the last one? So we have no last minute, done. That's all we need. That's our presentation. Next slide. Just so I can get the numbers up. Board discussion's over. We're all set. The board has set its budget. April 23rd is a regular meeting budget adoption. There will be just one presentation. And then May 8th is public hearing, and May 20th is budget vote. It will be in the North Gym because this will be under construction.
May 8th will be at 6 p.m. in the high school auditorium.
Oh, it's gonna be 6, not 5:15.
No, it's 5:15.
Terry?
The public hearing?
Yeah.
It's 6 p.m.
Okay, then that's wrong. We will correct it.
And it's at the auditorium.
Okay. Mr. Conklin, all yours.
Thank you to all of the budget team and all of your hard work. And I seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Drive safely, everyone. Thank you for coming out.